started with the copper people. We went to the Paleo-American. In the second half, we discussed the national petition that we're working on for Ascend to Safeguard. We shared some information about the social media sites that are there. Instagram, Ascend to Safeguard, Twitter, Ascend Safety. We talked about the website. We talked about the online petition page from the website, paleo-american.com. We covered a range of issues here that are specific to the Detroit folks. We talked about water issues that they're suffering. There was some mention of the gentrification. One of the biggest things I found with the audience last night really talked about was really getting our minds wrapped around the idea that this conversation is not racial as much as it is commercial.
Yes.
If we really take the feelings out of it, everything that most of us are complaining about in the inner cities and in the metropolitan areas, outside of somebody actually killing someone as a public official, that had nothing to do with money at all. But that really has to do with commerce and money. Even gentrification, with how certain times and certain decades people will move out of certain neighborhoods, they'll let it fall below a certain tax bracket, then they'll decide through chopping up in advance what businesses they want to move in that area based off of what trends are happening in the world. Then they'll decide to come back into the neighborhood, and they'll usually plan it out 10, 12 years in advance.
Yes.
They'll start getting involved in the board meetings.
Yes.
They'll usually have proposals that have been vetted by banks, so they already know how much money is going to come in, how many jobs are going to come in. And that whole process is because a lot of us don't have a recent history of understanding how the European commerce and the European political system are like woven together. If you go to the average census and you look at the census, when you look at which races have the highest number of businesses that are created,
yes,
we have the lowest number of businesses created. Now, if you remove all those that identify as European from that equation and you take what's left of that group, we are the lowest of that group too.
Yes.
There's a third piece that's really most important. Even if you take of all of the non-European groups and you look at the number of businesses that are sole proprietorships, we have the highest amount of sole proprietorships. So for me, having gone through corporate America, I would look at that and make a very generalized statement that we may say we have businesses, but we don't seem to have stepped over into hiring people.
Correct.
I have my own business, I'm the only employee, but I haven't evolved to the point where I can actually hire people and put myself on payroll.
Correct.
Because that's another layer, that's another depth and height and breadth and width of doing business, because it multiplies the amount of paperwork you have to do exponentially when you have people on staff.
Yes.
So if we haven't gotten to the point where we are doing that now, how can we possibly transfer that to our children?
All right.
Okay. And I'm gonna wager to go so far as to say that is associated with they understand how their own system works. When they move into the neighborhood, they understand how each of the three branches work. They will understand how the executive branch works. They understand how to stay involved in the legislative process before laws are actually passed. For instance, when there are laws at the state level, laws at the county ordinance level, at the city municipal code level, when those codes are going up for voting, they stay actively involved in that process. They go to the city council meetings. They actually contact their local representatives and ask questions about laws before they get passed. That is not something that's common with us. We don't really understand the financial ramifications of things like that. I'll give you an example. If you go to an affluent European suburb, and they usually have a lot of amenities in their neighborhood, if you look at the structure of their municipal board, they all have municipal bonds. And the neighborhood is able to determine what they're willing to buy into the bonds for to get the services that they want in the neighborhood. They don't ask for people to pay for it outright. They actually turn it into a financial investment transaction, and then they usually proceed in that way of understanding that's how it's financed. And only the people who pay taxes and live in that zip codes are the people they go to first, because they're the ones who are going to benefit from it. They've spent a lot of time and effort into how their system actually is set up. Europeans understand and watch court cases across every state because they understand what happens in California could jump off over here, and if they don't like what the city municipal board is doing in California or what the state of California is doing, they understand they need to stop it in California, because if they don't, it'll come over to Michigan, it'll come over here. We don't understand and pay attention like that. We really, they have groups of folks that all they do is monitor what's going on in the legislative and the judicial branches so that they can get ahead of this. They have no problems putting their money behind law cases to send people in another state because they don't want it to rub off on them 2-3 years from now in their state. And they actually put serious conversations into the households at the dinner room table with